Welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week we set the table for a discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of Joy of Cooking. We tackle kitchen victories and misadventures and what we are cooking and eating right now. Thanks for joining us at the table today. I'm Sarah Marshall, and I attended a fancy dinner last night and got fried chicken and Jojos on the way home.
We've all been there. I'm Megan Scott, co-author of the 2019 edition of The Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and I am basically a hero for eating the dregs of 2 different leftovers for lunch.
Thank you for your service. I'm John Becker, 4th-generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook. And after years of soapy servitude, I would like to call for all dishwashers to join with me in a general strike. Our voices should be heard.
Is that a threat? Are you threatening me?
No, I just wanted to see if there's any interest out there.
I have other strengths, okay, besides dishwashing.
Oh, I agree. Not trying to dispute that.
I am a non-dishwasher.
Oh, okay. That's good. We can also be in solidarity.
Yeah, and I appreciate the dishwashers.
I do. I really do.
Love it. Thank you, John, for your service. Thank you, Dirk, for your service. It's very necessary.
I love that you got fried chicken and Jojos on the way home from your fancy dinner. Were they good?
So good. That's kind of my thing on the way home. If if I'm hungry, like gas station Jojos, they're kind of like my savior sometimes. And I mean, my plan was I wanted to eat this fancy dinner, but I have a shrimp allergy, and the thing that they were serving was like shrimp and oysters, and so I couldn't partake. And then by the time there was like a fancy side, and so I was on the fancy side, and then I went over to the other side, and then by the time I got to the other side, there wasn't the rest of the food, and so it was a super bummer.
Can you explain what Jojos are? I feel like that is a very regional Pacific Northwest thing.
Is it?
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah. I mean,
well, the name, I think
true.
Jojo is very Pacific Northwest.
Jojos are like a big fat potato fried. They're not French fries. They're like a wedge of potato that is then deep fried. And they're
kind of seasoned.
They're seasoned. Yeah. They're like seasoned with, not spicy at all, but like seasoned with like a
seasoning salt,
Seasoning
perhaps.
salt, probably. They're salty, they're seasoned, they're deep fried, they're delicious. And usually, here in the Pacific Northwest, they're served with ranch dressing, not ketchup. Mm-hmm. That's like how you get them. So,
yeah, I feel like there is an origin story for them that is entwined with fried chicken or broasted chicken, which is like fried chicken that's fried under pressure, like what KFC does, but. Mm-hmm. I think that sales reps for the company, for the fryers, would actually be like, you can fry chicken in this, but also at the same time, these potato wedges will cook at the same rate, or they'll both be done at the same time, and that's kind of like how it all came about, from what I understand.
Well, and we have this place here called Reel 'em In that is like where you go for that, but it takes a while, so that's what I wanted. Someone mentioned it at the dinner I was at, and I was like, that's what I want to get. But you have to wait, because they can only do like one.
Yeah, their fryer is really tiny.
It's tiny, and everybody goes there for it. So you have to hang out and drink beers while you wait. So I couldn't get that. So my next best is convenience store on the way home.
I actually looked for Jojos, like no joke, like yesterday at a convenience store in Corbett, Oregon, and I was disappointed. They were fresh out. I was really sad.
Well, I can give you hot tips for where to get Jojos late night on your way home.
We should talk.
Yeah.
I know what you've been up to this week, John, but our listeners don't. What have you been cooking this week?
I feel like you were sick and then I was sick. And, so like over the last 2 weeks, we have done at least three different versions of chicken and rice. Mm-hmm. There was Gai, then I did like an improvised Arroz con Pollo type situation. And then you did a pot roasted whole chicken with rice.
Yeah, it's a Nasdaravian recipe on New York Times Cooking. Pretty simple, but it's like you cook the whole chicken in a Dutch oven with the rice around it. So the rice absorbs all the juices from the chicken. It is so it's just really comforting. It's not spicy or heavily spiced in any way, but it just is kind of what you want sometimes.
I would say that the chicken turns out like really fall apart. Mm-hmm. Like the breast, some people might shun the breast for being like cooked to a very safe temperature, let's say.
Yeah, well, you got to eat that first. You eat that the first day, and then the thighs hold up a little better for this, like the second day and the third day that you're eating it.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of liked how it turned out. You know, I feel like that texture in chicken breast is often people are meant to feel ashamed for making breast that way, but it's good. It could be good.
Are you dragging? Are you dragging, like quietly dragging my preparation of this recipe?
No, absolutely not. Like I feel like our friend Kate, she made us like this slow roasted chicken that took like what was it?
Many hours.
Many hours. And, you know, I was like, wow,
That's
that
great.
is really going to be overcooked. But it was pretty good.
It was really good.
I appreciate it.
Also, the chickens we get are from our CSA, and they're just like more flavorful, slightly more like robust chickens. I assume they're like healthier and they're, you know, running around getting a lot of exercise. So I do feel like they benefit from a little more cooking than you would do with supermarket chicken. So I really like to, you know, technically overcook it a little.
Fair enough.
We did also, well, I made our recipe of the week, which was the penicillin cocktail on page 24 of the 2019 edition of Joy. And I really enjoyed being able to go to the liquor store and buy 2 different kinds of scotch and put it on the business card.
There you go.
You muddle some ginger with lemon juice and honey. I think a lot of bars, as John mentioned last week, a lot of bars will make like a ginger and honey syrup instead. But if you're making them in quantity, that makes a lot of sense. But if you're just making one drink, I think muddling is good.
If you're drinking alone.
Yeah, if you're drinking alone. And then you add a blended scotch and shake that with ice. And then once you pour the drink into the glass, you top it with Islay scotch. So it's got the smoky and it's got the not so smoky. It's kind of layered, and I think it's good for this time of year too, because it almost tastes like something you would drink for a cold or like the flu or something.
Yeah, with just a little peaty campfire on top.
Yeah.
You know, just a little smoke.
Delish.
Sounds fun. I didn't tell you guys what I was cooking this week, but I think I mentioned I catered an event at Twist, and I made 1,000,000 pickled green beans because I was doing like a heirloom Bloody Mary caprese skewer. And so I pickled green beans in, some of them I did in tarragon vinegar, some of them I did in dill vinegar. And then I had so many left over because I made, you know, way too many, of course. And then I've been figuring out recipes to put those pickled green beans into. So we did like lettuce wraps that then you could put the green beans in. And then I did this recipe I found on Modern Proper that was like chicken with a little bit of fish sauce and then green beans, but I used the pickled green beans. And I just wanted to say that sometimes I feel like pickles, like pickled onions and pickled green beans and pickled vegetables is sort of like my cheat for like having meal stuff prepped. Like I'll just like open up onions or pickles or green beans and just like be like, oh, I don't have to cut veggies, and then I'll just throw them in the pan and saute them.
That's a really good idea.
Well, it just makes it so easy, you know.
Yeah.
And I always have pickled everything because I have, you know, have everything downstairs.
Well, yeah, and then you can just add salt to taste at the end.
Yeah.
You know, maybe pull back a little, just a tiny bit.
Well, I know it's going to sound like it tastes really pickly, but usually it won't. Like if I'm doing like, you know, a stir fry or something, I just will add the pickled things as one part of it. But then if I'm adding like then tomatoes and carrots and stuff like that, like I just have that one part be the seasoned part, and then everything else just sort of like sucks up those juices of stuff. And I'm not adding like all the pickling brine, just the pickled green bean part or the pickled whatever it is. So that's my tip.
That's an awesome tip. And I think that's helpful for us because we always have so many pickles.
We need to work through some pickles.
Only one refrigerator. We keep talking about getting a second refrigerator, but I think just using the pickles is easier and cheaper than getting a second.
Well, it will be like we gained a refrigerator.
Yeah, it's true.
You're welcome.
Joining us this week is Rosie Grant. Rosie is the creator behind the Ghostly Archive account on TikTok and Instagram, where she researches and recreates recipes found on gravestones. She works at the Center for the Study of Women at UCLA and is currently working on a food studies certificate at the UCLA Extension School. She received her master's in library science at the University of Maryland with a concentration in digital archives in 2022, where she got to combine her love of food writing, cemeteries, and archival work. The Gravestone Recipe Project first began during her digital archives internship at the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Rosie's cookbook, To Die For, a cookbook of gravestone recipes, is officially out today, the day of this recording. Hooray! Happy Pub Day, Rosie.
Congrats.
You. So exciting to be here.
Welcome.
What an exciting day to be on the show with us. I feel like Pub Day is an extra special day, and you took the time to be with us, so thank you.
Oh my gosh, no, it's such an honor to be here. Yeah, I feel like I haven't gone to like a store yet. I was at the office all day. So possibly after this recording, I might run to a Barnes and Noble and see it in the flesh, a physical book.
Yeah, you have to go do a bunch of photos and sign some books,
Yeah.
and you have to make it like official
Oh
first
my
day.
gosh, exactly.
Well, yeah, looking at the book, was reading the intro, and I love the origin story for how the book came about. And I was wondering if, for our listeners, if you can relate at least some of this. It's a pretty long and awesome story, but could you relate some of the circumstances that led you to this project?
Yeah, well, it started a little randomly for the fact that it turned into a cookbook. But yes, as you read in the bio so delightfully, I was interning at a cemetery and I was getting a library science degree. It was library and archives. And I had started a TikTok basically about my cemetery internship of like, what's it like to intern at a cemetery? And I was featuring different residents at Congressional where I was based, and then eventually was just, I grew beyond it. There were so many different ways people decided to be memorialized around the country, around the world. And that's how I learned about the very first gravestone recipe, which I guess it was earlier days in the pandemic. So at least for me, I was home a lot more. I was virtual. I was cooking a lot more. I had just gotten my New York Times cooking subscription, and I was just trying any recipe that could get ingredients for. And yeah, I'm coming across Naomi Odessa Miller Dawson's gravestone recipe. I was just so struck by it of like, oh my gosh, you can put a recipe on a gravestone. And I just thought it was so lovely. And I was curious of what the cookies tasted like. So I tried them and I posted the process. And yeah, that started the rest of them.
At that point, when you found that first recipe and posted about it, how did you know that you were onto something special and that you wanted to continue talking about gravestone recipes?
I guess in a couple ways, I was surprised by how much of an audience was online, both on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, really wherever, willing to talk about cemeteries. I think when I'd first gotten started, I didn't think there were that many people talking about it. And I was very wrong. There's a niche for everything, including death and food. And so I think for me, I was posting just because I was curious about it and I was excited to learn more. I knew very little about the death industry and memorials and that sort of thing, memorial markers. And as far as the recipe, I think I was so struck by, and like, I've worked in social media for years. I love digital storytelling, but I was very surprised about how honest and personal people were when I posted the recipe. First, there was a bunch of people commenting like, oh, a gravestone recipe. I didn't know you could do that. That's interesting. What would I put on my gravestone? And then there were some really deeply personal comments and even personal messages that I got of folks being like, my mom died last year and I miss her so much. But when I make her cake that she made for me every birthday or every holiday, I feel like she's here with me. Or, my dad died a few years ago. I make his chili when I miss him. And just like food story after food story about people using food and connecting it with grief and a lost loved one that I was and like it was so personalized, all these strangers on the internet fully sharing about them using food to connect with someone that they were missing. And I just thought it was so beautiful and powerful. And then I think I was at about 3 or 4 gravestone recipes of having tried them, because after I was learning more about Naomi, thinking she was the only one, and I was trying to Google search her, and a couple other women popped up who also had gravestone recipes that were featured on local news or blogs and things like that. And in that process, both of my grandmothers passed away. They were about a year apart, but it was kind of in the earlier days of the project. And I noticed that like at their funerals, we were talking about the food that they made for us as kids and no fancy recipes. Like my grandma, particularly one of my grandmothers, would have loved Jojos. They sound amazing. And so, yeah, like there weren't anything like surface level, like a stranger might have tried it and been like, oh, whatever, these are just mashed potatoes or a yellow cake or something. But for us, like when I try it, I want that every birthday. I want that during the holidays. And I feel like I'm in the kitchen with them again. And I'm a 5-year-old being served their birthday cake. And it's just, yeah, food is this really powerful memory tool that I'd never really considered before. It's like that movie Ratatouille, the Disney kids movie, but like when the villain at the end of the movie eats that dish and he's immediately back in his childhood home eating Ratatouille. And yeah, there's something about food that just, it's such a powerful memory tool.
Yeah, it's like harnessing many of your senses at once. It's like it's the smell and the visual and the flavor and everything just kind of it's a really powerful trigger. We've had a couple guests recently where I feel like we've talked about this a few times. We had cookbook author Maureen Aboud on the show to talk about her book Lebanese Baking, and in the introduction to her book, she writes about how her mother's death was kind of the catalyst for her writing that book. And then we had Sarah on the podcast who wrote and she was recording her mother's recipes while she's still alive so that she has this keepsake, and we all have it now, of her mother's recipes, which is just so cool. The idea of gravestone recipes, and you're right, I had never considered that as a way you could memorialize yourself until I think I was served one of your videos on TikTok. That's how I found you, was like, I was not a follower already. I just saw this pop up in my feed one day and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing that you can just put a recipe on your tombstone.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, if you have any advice for people out there who want to preserve their family recipes while their family is still alive, because maybe not everyone's going to put them on their gravestone, but maybe they want to keep their family recipes, held close. Anything you've learned while you've done this research?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If anything, I think that was the whole kind of second half of the process and the project was just learning how it's so important to document these. And I mean, I'm coming at this whole thing from an archivist background, and I was taking a genealogy class and while I was also doing this project, and part of the class we had to interview like our family historian. So I interviewed, this was when one of my grandmothers was still alive. We talked for like 4 hours. I recorded the whole thing. I got to ask all of these questions, and I was doing it in a class setting, which I probably wouldn't have done it otherwise. And she passed away 2 weeks after the interview.
Oh, wow.
And I had all of these food stories, like things that she served my dad when he was a kid, even talking about like when she was younger and what grocery stores she would go to and ingredients that she would use and what she had access to and what flavors she liked. And so at the beginning of this book, I wanted to kind of encapsulate that. So I have like 21 questions to ask your family members to document your food history. And then I also have like archiving can be so overwhelming. I say this now having a master's degree. I can find it very overwhelming. So I tried to have like a very simple, like personal archiving 101 of like, save the copies, send it to family members, document it as best you can. Because if no one does it, when someone passes away, it's like losing a library. So both of these cookbooks sound amazing. I really have to check these both out, and their episodes, of course. Because yeah, it's so precious. And if you don't document it, like, there's no time like the present. And I mean, I'm also speaking of this of relatives going through Alzheimer's, of like, there'll be a time where you're not able to document things. And so I'm trying not to be very like doom and gloom of like, interview your people now, like cook with them now. So for the cook who wrote a book with her mother still living and able to get and ask lots of questions and stuff, I'm imagining it's a little bit of a scary process because you're like, you don't want to imply that they won't be around someday, because like that's not, in a taboo society with death, we don't want to talk about this. For people who also just in general are like, oh, that's too much, on my Instagram and on my TikTok, I'm bookmarked just questions to ask your loved one. It can literally just be the who, what, wheres. And then if you have a family recipe, cooking it with them. And, if you video record it, that's amazing. But it can, yeah, you don't have to have it end up on your gravestone to preserve your family recipes.
It's funny you brought up Naomi and her spritz cookies as being like the first one that you got really interested in. And I thought it was hilarious that she was really tight-lipped with that recipe up until the very end. And I was wondering if, while you were putting this book together, if there were other cases like that where these people are holding on to the recipes and not wanting to share because it's their signature until it's time to save it for posterity.
Yeah, the secret recipe is such an interesting trend because when I first started the project, I had one coworker who actually she's a librarian, and she was like, "Are you allowed to cook these recipes? Like, is that what the people want?" Because she's like, "My family keeps all of our recipes a secret. Like, no one is allowed to tell anyone them, and it's like disrespectful to cook people's secret recipes." And so I was asking her more about it. I was like, why do they have secret recipes? Like, what is it about it? And she was like, well, it makes holidays more special. It makes like when you actually like, a chocolate chip cookie recipe, if it's the special Christmas chocolate chip cookie recipe that you look forward to every year and you can only have it from your parent or an aunt or, great grandparent, whoever, it makes it feel very special. And then the other case of families I've been talking to is that it's like secretly like the Chips Ahoy or Duncan Hines. Like, it's like a
Right.
very, or like Joy of Cooking. Like it's a very public recipe. And so there's like a little bit of like, oh, well, everyone has this recipe. But when it's secret, there's like, it almost changes like the mental flavor of it of like, I can only have this now. And so yeah, Naomi was the most like, yeah, like hilariously so very quiet about her recipe. People would ask for it in life, and her son would always say, like, you can ask for it, but she's not going to give it to you. Now, that being said, towards the end of her life, when they were doing pre-planning, when she was getting sick and they were planning her memorial, her son was like, I think like, what encapsulates you better than your recipe? Like, we all know you for this. You're such a good baker. You were like the family cook. You cooked for multiple generations of our family. And we all think about your spritz cookies as being with you. So she did keep a little bit of her secret in the sense that the gravestone only has her ingredients. There's no instructions on it. They did give it with permission to give me the ability to include it. So but her granddaughter jokes, she's like, oh my gosh, grandmother's getting so much attention for this. She would have been like rolling in her grave about this. So trying to be mindful of it. But the family seems very happy to share it, and they were excited that more people get to try it. And yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's a celebration of the person. Pretty much for almost everybody else, they were very free with their recipes. They wanted more people to try them. Three of the folks who are featured in the book are actually still living. They were part of pre-planning, and so they have the gravestones up. They've not passed away themselves yet. And one woman named Cindy, who her gravestone's in Alabama, she was just imagining like someone visiting a cemetery on a really maybe sad day, and you're grieving and you're at a funeral, and then she was imagining people looking over and seeing a recipe on a gravestone, and she was like, imagine some sort of joy that would come out of that, of like on a dark day seeing something that's kind of fun and lovely. And so she like that's why she put that on her gravestone. So she was like, yeah, I want everyone to try this recipe.
I love having only the ingredients and not the instructions. It's like the British Bake Off technical challenge.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Good luck. And I failed it when I first did it.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I didn't know what a spritz cookie. I mean, again, this started with me being a librarian, and I basically the first time I cooked them, I try to cook it exactly what I see on the gravestone, and I'd never made a spritz cookie before, and I made it kind of like a sugar cookie of just like the forming of it, and then of course like afterwards Googling spritz cookie, watching a lot of videos. I now own 4 cookie presses. I cooked it with her family, and she used like an old aluminum press with a tree shape. So now I have like an old aluminum press with a tree shape. So it's evolved, but the first time I made it was like comically not the cookie.
Were there like a lot of recipes that were like that? Because it seems like there are certainly constraints about putting a recipe on a gravestone, and a lot of context and maybe some instructional details that are left out. Was that like a huge challenge for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, challenge in the sense of like most of the things, a lot of American cookies are, close enough. It'll say like, sift, mix, bake at 350 for 10 minutes or whatever. So it's just simple enough that even if I don't get it right, it's still a good classic cookie. But definitely as I moved through it and I started interviewing the families, and it would just be closer and closer to what looks right to them. And in the best case scenario, I got to cook with some of the families. And so, that was by far and away the best case scenario. But like, I mean, even in one case, I would make assumptions as like, I'm a very like normal home cook. Like I love food. I was really digging into recipes, particularly during the pandemic. But like one of the gravestones is a cheese dip. And in my mind, like I thought all cheese dip was hot. And so I just heated it up. And I talked to the daughter and she's like, I mean, you can do it that way, but like it's a cold cheese dip. That's how it's made. So like I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. So definitely lots of experiments. Yeah, some of them would be very like there's a fudge recipe that's very difficult to make unless you are pretty familiar with making fudge. And I'm trying to think of like the ones that I had the most trouble with. Two of the gravestones technically don't have their recipe. They just mention their recipe. So I needed to get the recipe itself. And one was a meatloaf. This woman said she made the best meatloaf. And the cemetery actually had in their archives a copy of her meatloaf.
Oh, wow.
I was able to get it from them. And then, of course, chat with her daughter about it. So, yeah, which, you know, it was close enough of their gravestone mentioned their recipe, but I couldn't actually make it until working with their archives.
I was curious of how you found the gravestones. Like, do you just wander graveyards? Did you like call the graveyards and see if there was gravestones that had recipes on it? Like, how did you go about collecting your information?
It was like the most random. I felt like just like almost like a crazy detective of all the recipes. And I should say, even now, I'm up to 50 people who have done this, 40 of them featured in the book. And most of them, I'd say the first 8 were just featured on Google searches. They were in blogs, they were on Twitter, they were on Instagram, some were in local news. I got very good at going through like Reddit and variations of hashtags. One time I like on my own post, I misspelled recipe. And when I clicked on it, I noticed that someone else had also posted a gravestone recipe and they'd also misspelled recipe in the same way. So it was just a fluke that I came across their post. So it was just like very, you know, random things like that. When I was at about 10 recipes, families started reaching out. So like, you know, the project has been entirely crowdsourced. I've never just walked into a cemetery and found a gravestone, which I've been to like 2,000 cemeteries at this point, but none like found organically. They've all been sent to me. So yeah, the families have sent a good number of them, which is the best case scenario, because then I can talk through the process and they've already heard about the project. And then in probably the most frequent case is just they were featured on the internet. Someone either messaged me or I found it somewhere. And then from there, I have this like gigantic Google Doc. This is the librarian side of me. I have a huge spreadsheet in Google Doc. I have them all Google mapped out in like pins. And then I find their obituary. I find their find a grave, which is like the Wikipedia of gravestones. And then I would basically just start based on their obituaries, start emailing and Facebook messaging and Instagram messaging people who vaguely seem to be related to them, just based on name and location. And in some cases, like it would take about 2 to 3 years to get in contact with all of the families. Some people would write back immediately being like, oh, I thought we'd hear from you. Like, you know, we've been seeing other people being posted about online and we thought you'd reach out about mom. And then in some cases, like there was one woman who I was messaging her for like a year or two and eventually got in contact with the woman whose gravestone it was. She has a fruitcake recipe buried in Tennessee, but I got in contact with her daughter or granddaughter. And I was telling her granddaughter, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've been bothering your great aunt. I've been messaging her for years. I'm assuming that, you know, she's either grieving or just doesn't know who I am. Like I'm just this random stranger. And she was like, oh, great Aunt Joe has been dead for years. We never took down her Facebook. So like she is fully not alive. She would love this, but like that's why she hasn't written you back.
I mean, that's like an important part of death planning now is what do
Yeah.
you do with your social media accounts, I
Yeah.
guess.
How do you let people know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
have to have a plan.
You could post a lot of recipes on there, and it's like in memoriam.
Yeah.
Facebook.
John, do you know if anyone in your family has a recipe on their gravestone that references joy of cooking at all?
I
Or a recipe?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure no.
No.
The answer's no.
I know Marion has a really interesting, like a sculpture at her gravesite in Cincinnati, but it doesn't have anything to do with cooking or it's just a beautiful piece of art.
Mm.
Yeah. Most of the gravestone recipes in your book are baking recipes. Why do you think that is?
I've heard a couple of different things. For some people, it was that like special recipe. And so like, yeah, this wasn't their like everyday recipe. This was the one they would make for people's birthdays, or they would make it for holidays. In some cases, because it's the person themselves picking the recipe, and other times it's their family thinking about like, oh, what reminds us of them? And it's their that recipe.
Mm.
Yeah. So I also wonder if also like again with a lot of like cookies and that sort of thing, it's a little more forgiving with less text. You can get by with versus like, these are not lasagna recipes where you just need a lot more details and instructions. In the case of a few folks, I think they picked their recipe because it looked like a poem. And so some people were thinking at first they wanted a poem. And then they were looking at, I think they were like baking their person's or their grandmother or their parents' recipe. And they were like, oh, this written out kind of looks like a poem. And there's something really beautiful about that. And it's so specific to them. So in any case, that's why I think a lot of them bake goods for that reason of both special recipe and then it fit like that was the one recipe of all of their repertoire that fit onto a gravestone.
Now I want to hear everybody's. What would be on your grave?
Yes.
What would be on your gravestone, Rosie?
It's in the book.
Well,
I'm
nobody
sorry.
knows what's in the book yet.
Only we know.
Yeah, then I want to hear everyone's. Mine is like a clam linguine or even just a clam pasta.
Nice.
I really love clam dishes. They're very nostalgic. How about for you all?
I think mine would probably be my southern cornbread recipe.
Ooh.
'Cause
Oh, wow.
It's one I've worked on a lot and perfected and feel really proud of.
I would have to spend at least a year thinking about this.
That's true. You got to overthink it first.
Yeah, no, that's
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, my first thought would be my habanero carrot curry sauce recipe, but then what if that's like a secret recipe, like because I sell it? And what if that's like my daughter's legacy or something?
That's
like
true.
maybe that's going to be her business for her life.
Yeah.
So just in case that's like, how she's going to have a business, I'm going to say maybe she doesn't want to put that on my gravestone. So if not, then I would say my green tomato enchilada sauce recipe from my canning book, because that's already out in the world. And it's the one that I feel like is the most useful to people, especially people that live in Oregon, because we need something to do with all of our green tomatoes. So I would imagine I would be buried in Oregon. So then everybody can be like, oh my goodness, I now know what to do with my green tomatoes. So that would be
I
it.
love that. Oh my gosh, that is all sounds so delicious. And you could have like a little for the other sauce, like a little jar to reference it or something.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That's so smart.
I did appreciate your choice, linguine with clams.
Mm-hmm.
It's just classic, and I feel like that's actually the last thing I made for company, and it's also something that we had on our anniversary recently.
So are you picking that recipe too?
No, no. I'm just saying it was
like
a
it.
classy choice. That's all.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, I mean, I'm now a transplant in Los Angeles and I am like very nostalgic to home. And there's been a lot of like redefining my own community out here. And so that has turned into like regular dinners with friends where we'll have a few people over. And I love to make this clam sauce because it feeds a lot of people. It's really comforting. It reminds me of home. And I feel like I'm like coming into my own as like an adult now cooking without family around. And yeah, it's good for company. And it's like, oh, it's so delicious.
And finally, what is your relationship to the joy of cooking?
My relationship to the joy of cooking, I have been, as far as like, this is the archivist answer, the physical books of it, I have several copies of it. When I have been traveling around, I visited all of the gravestones. So I went from like Alaska down to New Orleans up to Nova Scotia, and I would pick up old cookbooks and community cookbooks as I went. So I have 3 different copies of Joy of Cooking from different years. They're just really beautiful, like physical books. And then, so those are around, I think I had to turn it upside down, but I think like there's a corner of one as a prop in the cookbook somewhere, just because I was very inspired. And the cookbook itself, I was very inspired by like these like classic old vintage cookbooks and the covers of them and like, the styling of them, I just find so lovely. And a lot of the families would also have a Joy of Cooking or a Betty Crocker, or just like, again, these classic cookbooks. So like they would pull them out during interviews and they'd have like handwritten notes in the corners from their loved ones. And that would be something inherited through the families. I got sent 2 different ones. There was one woman who collected like a prolific amount of old cookbooks. So her daughter sent me a couple of them that I now have. So I love the joy of cooking as the archival, like the physical cookbook form, which I just find so beautiful and such like a piece of time.
Yeah, we have a few old copies that have just been given to us by people, or sometimes friends will see one at a yard sale or an estate sale and just grab it and give it to us. And they're always really fun because I love seeing what people have written inside, but also what have people tucked inside. Like there might be old receipts, there are old like handwritten recipe cards, or just random bits of flotsam, and I just live for that stuff. It's so cool to get like a little glimpse into somebody else's life in the kitchen and just their life, especially from some of those older books.
Yes, it's such a gift and such like that's so nice that people just as they come because it seems like it's a very easy to access book. It's at so many I've seen it at many a yard sale or thrift store. But yeah, like when you open it up, that's such a joy and a treasure where you're like going through and you just find little things. The receipts I get very excited about,
Mm-hmm.
or little notes of like how they would alter a recipe for themselves. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's so cool.
Or just sometimes it would say next to a recipe, "Good!" exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is a favorite.
That's like giving you 5 stars.
Yeah, I love that.
The comment section in the olden days.
Yes.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about an easy way to enhance your meals. Whether they are a healthy vegan grain bowl or that late night snack we'll pretend didn't happen the next day, and that easy way is Marshall's Hot Sauce. For 15 years, chef and cookbook author Sarah Marshall has been hand-making and bottling these delicious sauces. She works directly with local farmers and highlights the lovely flavors of fresh seasonal produce. They're gluten-free, there are no additives, dyes, waxes, or binders, and they have mouth-watering combinations like serrano ginger lemongrass, or habanero carrot curry, or even whiskey smoked ghost, which was featured on Hot Ones. So head on over to marshallshotsauce.com, that's Marshall's, HAUTESAUCE.com, and see all the available sauces and spice blends. Oh, that's right. Sarah's created spice packets by dehydrating and freeze-drying actual produce, so you can impart flavor to your food with more vegetables. But that's a story for another day. Find all of these delicious creations at marshallshotsauce.com and enter HOTJOY, that's one word, capital H, AUTE, capital JOY, one word, at checkout for 20% off. That's HOTJOY at checkout for 20% off. And now, back to the show.
So each week we answer a caller question or hear a story. And this week, Sarah, what are we talking about?
Oh, we have a clip to play, so let me play the clip.
Hi there, I want to tell you how much I enjoy your show. You requested information about your history of the joy of cooking. And you might be interested that I got my copy in 1966 from Jeff Rombauer. I had a signed copy, which is dearly loved and sitting on my shelf, held together with a Velcro strap because the 2 layers of tape that were holding covers on have given up the ghost after all these years. My version is from 1964. Jeff and I went to high school together, and he gave this to me and several other girls in our class that copies when we graduated. And it was one of the nicest gifts I've ever gotten.
All right. Thank you so much for sending in that story. John, how are you related to Jeff Rombauer?
That's a really good question. I've met Jeff and his wife Loretta. They're lovely people, and I think
That was Tut's son, right? Do I have that wrong?
Yeah. Uncle Edgar's son. Yes.
So Irma's son's son.
Correct. That's right.
Those things always confuse me so much.
So my relationship to him is
I couldn't begin to second cousin twice. I don't know, something removed.
We should have worked this out.
I know.
Oh well.
The family tree. But that's really awesome. And I love so much that you said that it kind of had given up the ghost after all of those years, since this is kind of it's not a spooky episode, but
yeah, we thought it fit. It's our ghostly episode, and it's
Yes.
going to be airing Halloween week. It all came together.
we found several copies over the years. Like I remember one time John and I we were at the coast and at somebody, so it was like a friend of mine was visiting from North Carolina. We were in Oregon at the coast at this beach house that was her great aunt's or something. And up in the pantry, tucked way back, was an old Joy of Cooking that was like held together with a hair tie. Like the spine was broken, the pages were falling out.
Yeah, and the hair tie was like, I mean, it was bulging.
Yeah,
and the hair tie was like, bless that hair tie. It was really
doing a lot. It was doing the most.
It was trying to hold on, but you could tell it was about ready to fail.
Yeah. And then we were sent a copy from somebody who I think must have gotten in touch with us on Facebook or somewhere on social media. And she was preparing to go into like an assisted living facility. And she said, I just wanted to send you this book. I have used it for my entire, adult life. I've raised, I can't remember how many kids she said she had, but she was like, I've raised so many kids. And
it's been through like 2 floods and 1 home fire. I mean, there was
and a divorce, or there was a big story that she sent us. It was very sweet, a letter with that book, and we still have that copy. Those are very precious to us.
And that was a paperback edition. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it was in pieces. We have it in a Ziploc. It is no longer a single book.
But we wanted to talk a bit about some of our favorite cookbooks that we use the most. They haven't exactly given up the ghost yet for us. I don't think we have any that are totally broken down like that, but
so work copies of Joy.
We're working on it. Oh yeah, our work copies of Joy of Cooking have bit the dust for sure. John, what about you? What are some cookbooks that you think about when you're thinking about the ones you use the most?
Truly Mexican by Roberto Santibanez is a big one for me. I feel like there are maybe 3 or 4 recipes that I've gone back to, like probably each one like
many times.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to say dozens of times now. And of course, I have to go back and look at them because I'm forgetful. I should have them like down pat by now.
That's what cookbooks are for. You don't have to remember it.
Yeah, so you can make room for other useless things in your
brain. Right, exactly. Yeah, there's like a green serrano salsa in that book that's kind of creamy. It's a really interesting salsa.
Yeah, you take the stems off of serranos and you fry them in a fair amount of oil, like maybe like half an inch, and kind of turn them and, wait until they're blistered. Then you transfer them to a blender. Then you add, I think
there's some onion in there.
Yeah, there's like I want to say it's like a 1/4 cup of just a plain yellow onion. Not sweet. I wouldn't do that because I would probably... Yeah, but you just fry the onion, until it's like a little golden around the edges, and it's like some water.
I feel that's it, plus some water and some salt in the blender.
Yeah, you're supposed to use the frying oil in order to... So it ends up kind of being like a mayonnaise, and the serrano and the onion end up kind of... It'll remain stable, like it won't separate for like several days. And I think it's because of all that vegetable material in there that's kind of holding the emulsion together, like instead of egg in case of a mayonnaise.
But it is sneaky. It is a sneaky salsa because you think it's going to be mild because it's this beautiful green color and it's creamy looking.
Everybody thinks it's guacamole, and then
they're tricked.
Yes. It's delightfully hot. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and there's a tomatillo and cascabel chili salsa that is fantastic.
Yeah, those are both fantastic recipes that we make all the time. I wanted to shout out, I have several books I could talk about, but I wanted to shout out the first cookbook I kind of fell in love with. I was in college and my parents got it for me for Christmas. It's called A Platter of Figs by David Tanis. And it's it's like California cuisine. So David Tanis worked at Chez Panisse. And so the recipes are it's like what David Chang made fun of. It's like just a platter of figs or a bunch of figs on a plate, which it kind of is. But it was my introduction to California cuisine as like someone who grew up in the South. I had no idea. And I was like, this is amazing. Everything looks so good and so fresh. And the photos are, it's like a sun-dappled kitchen with all these fresh fruits and vegetables. And so I loved that book so much that I was studying abroad in France the semester after I got it. I took it with me to France in my luggage and then read the whole thing like one page at a time. I was like kind of rationing myself every day. Like I would read like one page or one section and then put it away. And then I brought it back home with me. That book has been to France and back. I loved it so much.
I do want to mention one other title. It's 660 Curries by Raghavan Iyer.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one.
And I think it's actually relevant to this conversation specifically. But some of the first times I attempted to make spice blends, like South Asian spice blends, like garam masala, chaat masala, and like all of that stuff, Raghavan was the person that I went to for that kind of thing. I think there's a bottle masala recipe in there that has something like 30 ingredients. And I remember some of them get toasted, some of them don't, and some of them are left whole when they're toasted. And I think some of them are actually toasted when they're ground. Anyways, it's a complicated recipe. And I remember it was like such an achievement, or I felt like it was an achievement. But yeah, obviously plenty of curries to choose from in that book, as well as a whole bunch of other dishes. I don't know why it's called curries, because it's got everything. Mm-hmm. But also, he passed away a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And, every time I pull it out, I do think about him.
Yeah.
We met him just once, but he was just such a sweet man. And it's a special book.
Yeah, it's a really good book. What about you, Sarah?
I think the cookbooks I've used the most, kind of one that really got me cooking, I think, in the beginning, Padma Lakshmi's book, Tangy Tart, Hot and Sweet. I hadn't cooked much Indian food, and when I first got that book, I mean, it came out so many years ago. I remember going and trying to seek out all these spices I'd never used before. So I had never heard of like sumac and things like that. So it was really my introduction into that world, and I feel like kind of inspired me into making my own sauces. So that was way before the hot sauce business. So even 20 years ago, I think the book came out or something. I love that book. I still cook from it. There's all these rad recipes, and it's like a lot of making sauces from scratch. So that was a really cool book. Nice. And I still love it. And the pages are messy and splattered. And so that's one of those books that eventually the pages will fall out for sure. And I think another one I use all the time, and it's really, worn out, Kevin West Saving the Season canning book.
Oh, that was on my list too.
That's one of the ones I like pull out still all the time. It'll definitely fall apart someday. I love it. I recommend it to people always. It's one of those great ones. And then local author, and she's been on the pod, Ivy Manning, Soups from Scratch and Quick Breads to Match. I'm not a baker. I barely bake, but because Ivy has all these recipes that you can make these breads in like under 30 minutes, that's like the perfect recipe for me and the perfect recipe to make for my family. So I pull that book out all the time, and it's same. It's all crunchy because it's like got all these flour baking recipes. So that would be one that's gonna give up the ghost.
How about you, Rosie?
These all sound so good. I'm writing these down as you talk. They all sound incredible. These sauces, the figs. Oh my goodness. Mine, my go-to ones right now, all I can say is I'm living in this world, but like ones that combine history with the food, and particularly if it's spooky history. So I have been revisiting Amy Bruni's Food to Die For, which she's a ghost hunter. She was on Ghost Hunters, a bunch of shows around that. She has this really wonderful cookbook where she goes to historic locations, and she has like a ghost story with it, and then it has like a historic recipe. I'm very personal there. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, and so she has our favorite haunted tavern and this really lovely fish recipe that my dad has made. It's so good. It's like classic spooky season. And then another one that I like a lot that's, again, kind of just these alternative cookbooks is Midnight Chicken and Recipes Worth Living For, which is by Ella Risbridger. And it's a little bit about like tragedy and loss, like personal grief and trauma, and then cooking through that. And so she has recipes. I was very inspired by this book because it's like an alternative cookbook. Mm-hmm. The recipes are really good, including her midnight chicken recipe. It's delicious.
Maybe too much detail to go into, but what is midnight chicken?
She goes to a hospital for a mental health crisis and gets out. It's like this pretty simple recipe, comfort food chicken that she makes. And it's like the summary of it was basically like, this is the dish that she makes when she's like kind of feeling really low, and it's very low effort, and it's very soothing and filling. She gets that protein blast. It's not too difficult to make, and it's a lot of ingredients that she just always has in her cupboard. And it's just like a delicious chicken recipe.
I love that so much. I have so many cookbooks written down. I will mention one more. I'm like, which one should I pick? Wild Fermentation by Sandor Katz. I got that when I was in college, and another college cookbook. But it inspired me so much. And the way he writes about fermentation is so just beautiful and exciting that I was like, I have to make kimchi right now. And I was living in a dorm. I had a big crock and I went to the farmer's market and bought all these vegetables and I made kimchi. And because I had never made kimchi before, I didn't know that it smells when you are fermenting it.
Sure
like
does.
all fermented things smell. And so I'm in this dorm. Luckily, it was my own room. I had my own room, but you could walk in the dorm and smell my kimchi from the front door. And I was like, I did not intend for this to happen.
Did an RA like talk to you?
Nobody talked to me
really?
about it. I think it was just like, it's going to smell bad in here. You know, like college dorm is not a good smelling place to begin with. So I think everyone was just like,
They might have
"Hey,
just
whatever."
thought it was you.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody wanted to say anything.
They were being nice. Yeah, but that was a very formative book for me.
That just reminds me that on Thursday I'm going to the fermentation festival and they call it the Stink Fest.
Yes, aptly named. But for this week's Joy Scouts recipe, we wanted to pick something from the 2019 edition that was either inspired by or from another cookbook. And so we chose the mushroom confit recipe on page 252. John, could you talk a little bit about the context of this recipe?
Sure. I was flipping through, it's a cookbook by Thomas Keller called Ad Hoc at Home. And I found this recipe, I think it was published as a mushroom conserva, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
It has olive oil, it has these garlic and all these aromatics that I always associated with this one really awesome simple Spanish dish that's like served as a tapa called champiñones al ajillo, just mushrooms with garlic. And I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of like a larger format version of that dish that maybe you can keep in the refrigerator. So, yeah, we ended up trying to make it. And, as written, we were not like bowled over by the recipe. And so I was like, no, these flavors are awesome. We can make this better. So that's kind of how it ended up going. But yeah, so we just had the garlic and all of the herbs and aromatics. We infused the oil with them a little bit more than Chef Thomas Keller calls for. And yeah, salting the mushrooms, draining them, and then having them go a little bit longer at a lower temperature. It just has a really nice kind of meaty texture to it.
And it's a really nice way of using wild mushrooms. Like that's when we make it is like if we've been mushroom hunting. And since we're getting into mushroom hunting season, I thought this would be a fun recipe for that.
Yeah, it's really good with chanterelles.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine it would be great with porcinis, but maybe you want to hang on to those and do something extra special with them if you find them. It's really good with just basic mushrooms too. Just cremonese or oyster mushrooms would be really good with that. I would stay away from matsutakis, but
Those are precious anyways. You don't use those for that. That's on page 252. If you make the recipe, please tag us on Instagram at The Joy of Cooking. We would love to see what you make. It's the mushroom confit serving wise is really good. As John was saying, I don't know if you said or not, but it's really good on toast, on little toast like crostini, or you can make like a big toast with them. I also think they're really good on polenta.
Yeah, polenta or on risotto.
Mm-hmm.
Either one of those would be great. Yeah, you want to store it in the refrigerator and then bring it out and get it to room temperature, or even just heat it very, very briefly and gently before you serve it. It's really good.
If you have a question or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text. We would love to hear from you. We really would love to hear from you. We need more questions. Next week's topic comes from our caller.
This is from Kimberly via Instagram. I always struggle with meal planning. Any tips? This is for you.
Yeah, this is a perfect question for me.
It
I
sure
have
is.
so many thoughts, and we will talk about meal planning on the show next week. All right, what is everybody cooking this week?
Well, I'm going to do a chef in the market on Saturday. So I am doing a delicata squash with lentil soup. So I have to practice that first, and then I have to make it in market. So I'm going to probably eat that a few times. So that's my focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Rosie? Are you cooking anything or looking forward to eating anything this week?
I'm coming to her house for dinner. Since my book comes out today, my book launch is tomorrow, and I'm going to have a bunch of Gravestone recipe cookies. So I'm going to make Jennifer's chocolate chip cookies, definitely going to make Naomi's spritz cookies. I might make a Texas sheet cake from a woman named Helen who's buried in Michigan, and maybe some Snickerdoodles from California. So lots of cookies this week, which I can eat that for dinner, right?
Oh, totally.
Sure.
Everyone will be thrilled. What about you, John?
Yeah, I don't know. We're probably going to be going to a harvest festival in Hood River, so that could yield some apple-y.
Yeah, some
Type.
apple-related things.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's time to actually make the previous recipe of the week.
The apple dumplings that we never made. We assigned it, but we didn't make it.
Typical.
We're also going to make tonight, all I have planned out is maybe I'm not the person to go to food for meal planning. I only have tonight's dinner planned out, but we're going to make Hetty McKinnon's vegetarian tomato mapo tofu and a cucumber salad because my cucumber, that's like the one thing I've been able to grow this year is cucumbers, but man, do I have so many cucumbers.
It's so funny. My cucumber plant grew one cucumber. We were the opposite.
So sad.
By the way, just admitting that you don't have a meal plan, I feel like that's establishing your street cred. It's not like,
sure.
Yeah.
It's an imperfect art. There's, no need to strive for perfection.
Right. And you're a normal person who struggles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Good job admitting
Very
it.
much so.
Way to be you.
And Rosie, before we wrap, where can listeners follow you?
Folks can find me at Ghostly Archive on TikTok and Instagram, and you can find To Die For, a cookbook of gravestone recipes on most major booksellers.
And we are putting your book in our bookshop.org storefront, so folks can also find it there, and we'll link to it from the show notes as well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by subscribing to the show and leaving us a review. Follow us at joyofcooking.substack.com and on Instagram at thejoyofcooking. Stay tuned for next week, where we'll talk about meal planning, and don't forget to make this week's recipe, mushroom confit, on page 252. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
And we could not do this without our fantastic team at Joy of Creation Production House. Thanks to today's producer, Dirk Marshall, and Haley Bowers, our audio engineer, and Shannon will be back next week. If you love the stories we bring you each week, please consider supporting us on Patreon. As an independent media company, your support is absolutely essential. It allows us to continue creating high-quality professional episodes that amplify the voices of women, small business owners, writers, artists, and creatives, and keep their stories free from commercial pressure. By becoming a Patreon member, you're not just supporting us, you're investing in the future of independent media. Please visit patreon.com/The Joy of Creation Production House to join our community today. Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast dreams.